Hi everybody and welcome to my new EVE-NG video series. A lot of you asked for it, and in this video I will finally cover the installation, configuration and of course the usage of EVE-NG, especially with the Juniper gear. So without further ado, let's start with the first video, installing EVE-NG. When booting the Ubuntu 16.04 ISO, you're greeted with a language screen. Select the language of your choice, in this case English, and hit enter. In the next screen, select Install Ubuntu Server to proceed with the installation. The ISO will ask you for the installation language. I select English here. In the next screen, it will ask you for the location where your server is installed. Since mine is in my home office, I will select Europe and Germany here. Once that has been done, it will ask you some localization options, the locales and the keyboard layout. That's important for your passwords later, because with an incorrect keyboard layout, your passwords might not be set as expected. So just run this simple to use wizard and your keyboard layout will be automatically detected. Installation routine will automatically detect your network adapters and will try to obtain an address via DHCP for IPv4 and IPv6. If you don't have DHCP running, you might need another step here, configuring a static address. In my case, I run DHCP. Next thing is the host name. In this demo, I will select EVE-NG as the host name for my server. In the next screen, it will ask you for your full user name. I will just use Christian for this example. And it will also ask you for the username to use, so for the account. I will also select Christian. And I will use a super secret password here that I obviously won't tell anyone. It will ask you if you want to encrypt your home directory. Since this is a lab setup device, I will not encrypt it. It will also ask you if the time zone is correct. In my case, it's Europe Berlin, so it's fine to just say yes. It's now detecting all the other hardware that was not detected before. Next thing you're gonna do is partition your disk. I will use the entire disk and set up LVM, and I will not encrypt it since it's a demo device. And usually for lab devices like EVE, I wouldn't use the encryption because once you have to reboot, if you have an encrypted disk, every time you reboot you need to enter your password. And if you don't have console access to it, that can be quite difficult to achieve. So therefore, I'm skipping the encryption part here. In my case, I only have a single hard disk, so I just will select it. And I will tell it that it can erase all the data and write the changes to the disk. And I want to use the whole disk, so I just select all the space that's available. And now, as you can see, it's installing the system and copying the data to the disk. Depending on the hardware that you use, this might be a little bit faster or a little bit slower. Just be a bit patient. case you need to use a proxy server to get out, you can insert it here. I will just select next because I don't need to use a proxy server in my lab environment. Now the task selection might ask you if you want to use automatic updates. I skip this because I don't want my system to update automatically. I want to have full control what packets to install and when. And in the software selection menu, I would simply add the OpenSSH server. The standard system utilities should already have a mark, and the OpenSSH server is added as well to save some time later. The system will ask you if you want to install the grub bootloader, and you want to select yes here because we are not using a dual boot system. We simply want to boot the Ubuntu to use Eve. Once your server is booted up again, you're greeted with the login screen for your EVE-NG host. We can now log on with the user that we've created earlier. So in my case, I will use the username Christian with my super secret password again. This allows me to log in as the user that we have created before. And as you can see, there are already a lot of packages that we can update. But since we installed the OpenSSH server before, we can also access it via SSH. So we simply type IP address so that the server will give us the IP address that we need to know. In our case, 192.168.133.128. And now I can use PuTTY or Secure CRT to access the server. We did it. Our server is accessible via SSH. Now we can become root by typing sudo-i and inserting the password for our user. This allows us to run commands as the root user, and we will need that. We need full root access for this installation routine. So type in your password and become root. So now we can go ahead and type passwd root to set a new password for the user root. Choose a password that you like and remember to write it down for later. So now let's check the hostname of our server. cat etc hostname should show us, yes, it's still EVE-NG. That's great. Now we need to change the hosts file. We can do that with nano etc hosts. We need a name for our EVE-NG server, which is EVE-NG. We will also give it a little domain name, as shown here. I will use lab.local and also use the short name of EVE-NG for it to recognize this. In Ubuntu standard installation, the login for the user root via SSH is prohibited, and there is a good reason for it. However, for Eve, we need to change that. Simply edit the etc ssh sshd config file and look for the permit root login statement. Change it from prohibit to yes. Save the file and exit it. After that, we need to make sure to restart the SSH service for the new changes to become effective. After the service has been restarted, make sure that it's still running and that you don't have any config hiccups. So this looks good. So now we can SSH via the root user and we don't need our special user anymore. As you can see, we still have a lot of packages that could be updated. So let's do that first in order to install Eve. I use the command apt dist upgrade to install all the packages that I need. This makes sure that the server is on the latest 16.04 version with all packets up to date for as prerequisite for Eve and G. Simply select yes and wait for it to finish. Depending on your hardware, this could take some time. After the installation, we need to reboot the server in order for the new kernel to become active. We did it. Our server is up and running and has all the latest security patches installed. The next thing we're going to need to do is to prepare Eve for the legacy network interface names As you can see, we still have ENS37. However, we need to change that. The command shown here is also described on the EVE website. Simply paste it, update your grub, and that's it. You have now successfully changed the interface naming. However, we need to adjust. On the file etc network interfaces, we need to change the ENS37 to ETH0. If you would not do this and reboot the server, well, there would be no config for your ETH interface, so you couldn't reach the server over the network again. And since we are connected via SSH, that would be pretty bad. So just change it to ETH0 and now reboot the server for the changes to become effective. Once the server is back up, you can change the settings with the IP address command. And now you see that it has adapted to ETH0. Now for the hardest part, we need to install the EVE-ng package. So how to do that? I'm pretty sure you know the 65 steps that are needed. I'm just kidding. There's a simple script that you can run. It's a one-liner shown here, also described on the EVE website. It will install all the necessary packages for you, and you don't have to worry about anything. There is a script for the Community Edition as well for the Pro Edition, depending on what you want to install. In this video, I'm showing you how to install the Community Edition, so I just leave the Pro away. Simply run the script and let it run for a while to install all the packages. That was easy, right? Now simply reboot the server for the new installation to become active. After your server comes back up, you're greeted with the Eve installation wizard. Simply type the root password that you want to set in the first column. Hostname, just leave it as Eve and G. The next screen, you can set your DNS domain name. And as before, I will choose lab.local. In the next screen, you can select the IP address of your Eve management interface. I will leave it on DHCP because in my lab I'm running DHCP server. But you can also use a static IP. It's up to you and depends on your environment. In the next screen, for the NTP server, just leave that one blank. And again, if you need a proxy server, type it in here, but I will use the direct connection because my Eve has direct internet access. Now Eve is creating the new host keys. So next time you reconnect your Eve, you will see that a new host key has been generated and that you need to accept it first. And that's it. You have successfully installed Eve and G on your system. So now we can go ahead and try out the web interface. Open a web browser with your Eve's management interface IP address. Select admin as the username and Eve as your initial password. These are the default settings. Now you're on the main menu inside your Eve and G. You can go to System Status to check what your CPU and memory looks like. So that's it. We successfully installed Eve and G and we are ready to lab away with our Juniper gear. We now need to add all the images, but we'll cover that in the next video. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss a video again. And thank you for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments below and I will try to answer all of them. See you next time. Bye!